Thank you. I just want to make sure we have enough members for quorum. I see myself, Harriet, Brian, Deborah, and Pauline. You're on the phone.
Pauline is here.
That's great. I'm glad you could join us. I know everybody has a lot of things going on. So I'm going to start with some reading the agenda and trying to be mindful that, as I just forgot myself, to say my name before I speak. And so raising hands, whether they be physically on your screen or with the emoji, so that throughout the meeting, if you'd like to speak or ask questions, again, we should always try to say our name as we begin to speak. And I think that's it, unless I forgot some other rules, Harriet, that you had reminded me to do that I'm forgetting now because I have COVID. And I just keep saying it's because I have COVID. But okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to start off tonight with an update from Adrian Pomeroy, followed by an update from Harriet Randbeg, and then I have some updates to share as well. And the majority, we also have a variance request for 20 Stevenson Mon Street. And when we get to the section of just talking about the variance, I can explain a little bit more about that piece. Other than that, the bulk of the meeting was designed so that we can have an open conversation and start to sort of plan what we're going to do as a body and moving forward. So like what opportunities, we're having new members, what types of things are people interested in. So I will, I'm happy we have time to have an open and thoughtful discussion. So unless anyone has any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Adrian Pomeroy to give us her update, please.
Looks like Lori has a question.
Yes, I wasn't interviewed and officially approved at the previous meeting.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's a public meeting, and we're happy that you and other applicants are here today. The process is still going through for everyone. None of our new commissioners are officially commissioners yet, but the chair has the ability to open the floor up to have broader conversations. The things that we couldn't do would be to have anyone who's not a voting member vote. But that doesn't mean you can't participate in a conversation. And certainly, I'm very happy that you're all here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Floor is yours. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot.
Yeah.
Calling the meeting to order.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me, Holly, can I interject? This is Harriet. Let's try to remember to say our names before we speak, and raise a physical hand or holler or reactions hand if you'd like to speak. And yeah, that's it for protocol right now, I think.
Thank you, Harriet.
Yeah.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Through the chair, for those of you who don't know me, I know all of you because of the interview process, or you've been serving on the commission. My name is Adrian Pomeroy. I serve the city as the ADA coordinator. As part of that role, I'm the staff liaison to this commission. So I have a few minutes here, and I'm going over three things. The first thing is very related to what Holly just spoke to. The final step that the majority of you are going through right now is you received a pretty dense email from me that was from our clerk's office. So there was a link to do a conflict of interest training. And then there were several documents attached to that email that need to be signed and either sent back to me or could be sent to the clerk's office. I think the majority of you have opted to send them straight to the clerk, which is much better. The system is set up in a way that the clerk's office will get notification that you have completed the conflict of interest training. And we're going to start to audit that a little bit at the end of the week to make sure everybody is accessing that. Okay, the training itself takes about an hour or so. It's a lot of talking to be fair, and just clicking through sort of a very fancy slideshow and video, but very important information. Once that's completed, then we will arrange times for you all to come to City Hall and be officially sworn in by Clerk Wells. She is also offered to come to the February meeting and be the first agenda item in person to do the same thing. If we feel that's better for schedules, that may not work, but that is definitely on the table. Rashid, did you have a question about that?
Please.
Yes.
I'm having issues with when I was trying to, at first the link was not working, but after it started working, but there are some two drop down boxes that requires me to put in the what kind of organization I work for and everything. But I tried most of them. In actual sense, I didn't know which one is which, because I looked for SSPD and I could not get anything.
So what you're looking for in that box is Somerville. So the entity that you're completing the training for is the city of Somerville. So you're looking for Somerville in that drop down.
And then the next one.
Yeah, it's not gonna, the next one, what is the next one? Does anybody remember? I just redid this training myself and I already forgetting.
It's a commission, and I think they ask you the name of, you have to write in the name of the commission.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Michael.
yeah, if you are able, it would
Michael.
Thank you,
That was
Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are able, it would be helpful to actually write out the full name, which is the Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities. If not, you can put just the SCPD, and the clerk's office will certainly understand what that is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you so
please, of course. So please, I know there's a lot of moving parts there, but please get it done as soon as possible. And we really appreciate your work. Lori, I will touch base with you. I know Hannah is working on getting you your makeup time with City Council scheduled either for the end of the month or in February. So I will be in touch about that as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. The second thing is, we may talk about it a little later, but I'll just bring it up now. The Department of Urban Forestry and Public Space is upping their plan for public space within Somerville, and they are in the feedback stages. So they are hosting 2 public meetings this week in person to gather feedback for the new plan and ideas. There is a survey out as well. And then they will have another meeting online where they will review initial ideas and feedback. I did send an email about this, and I'll send a reminder, but the first one is tomorrow evening at the West Branch Library. I believe it starts at 6:30. And then the one, 6:30, 8 p.m. at the West Branch Library tomorrow. And then on Thursday, they are doing the same thing again at the Capuana School Cafeteria, which is 150 Glen Street. I think you only need to go to one of those. You are certainly welcome to go to both if you have the time. But I know that many of you mentioned during your interview process, you have a lot of interest in public space and improving accessibility there. So now is a really great opportunity to give that feedback if you are available to attend. And I know that that department would be really excited to have feedback from this group. And then the final thing, if you all are interested to save the date, Holly was able to secure 26 tickets to the Celtics game on Monday.
Oh.
January 29th, and the
Mhm.
game starts, I believe, at 7:30. If you would like to reserve a ticket for yourself and a guest or a support person, just email me at ada@somervillema.gov, and we will reserve one for you. And that, I think, is all I have. I hope I stayed within 5 minutes. I did not time myself.
Wow.
Okay,
This
this
is
is Holly.
Pauline.
That's
Yes,
Go ahead,
Colleen.
Pauline, I have a question.
Sure.
How can I do this? Because I can't email.
Sure. Do you want to go, Pauline?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Do you think Jenny will want to go, or do you want to check with her later?
She is in the hospital now. She may be going to rehab, and I don't know
Okay,
her status. I know she wants to go,
of course.
but that might be a little tricky.
Sure.
I'll talk to
Okay,
her and find out what she wants to do.
sure. So I think Holly and I will just put 2 tickets under your name, and then Jenny can let us know when she's able to do that.
Yeah, because
Great.
the other question I had would be being able to have somebody push a wheelchair for her.
Sure.
This is Holly. The Celtics actually have an accessibility department, just like the Red Sox did. But one thing I noted that was different is you can sort of have, like, I don't know if it's call in the same day or ahead of time, and you make a reservation, and they literally come walk you from a particular entrance in your chair directly into your seat. So if there's something, if that's sort of the type of assistance that would be helpful. Did the event or save the date info get posted yet, Adrian?
It did. It was posted on today at 12:30.
Do you mind when you have a moment putting that link in the chat? I know that
I
may
will
not.
find it. It's on, I have the Facebook link, but I don't know if that will come up on my work computer.
There,
but I can check.
there's a invitation that
Yeah.
explains things and includes a link or phone number for accessibility needs.
Yeah, and we can also email that out tomorrow, so folks have it. And I did forget one more thing, I'm sorry. We are at a time of year where there's weather, as we've experienced, there is illness. Because of weather is why Holly and I made the decision to take this fully remote on this evening. But we just ask your flexibility, because those decisions sometimes have to be made pretty last minute, meaning within 3 hours of a meeting. And so with that said, I ask as a courtesy, if you were ever planning to attend a meeting in person and you are ill, to make a good decision for your own wellness and other folks. And please stay at home. COVID is still a thing, flu is still a thing. So just as a courtesy, and the sun will start to set later in the day and it will get warmer later, and we won't have to worry about those things anymore. But unfortunately, we're in January, so just be mindful of that given the time of year. And now I'm done.
Thank you, Adrian. Harriet, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm going to report very briefly, or as briefly as I can. On December 21st, this is on mobility, and in particular, it's on pedestrian crossings and walkways and so forth, mostly pedestrian crossings. Brian, as head of engineering, and an assistant, Rebecca, and maybe a third person, I'm not sure, agreed to meet me and Frank at the Davis Square T station on the Somerville Theater side, because I've had difficulty with the raised crosswalks, and it gave me a chance to demonstrate the challenges that I have in a raised crosswalk. And before I explained, I don't know, Brian, you were very careful and astute in your observations. Did you notice anything in particular that was problematic for me, as far as keeping good orientation to my whereabouts, including the crosswalk? And you can say
Yeah.
not now, but I just thought I'd ask you because
No.
you've made this observation.
Yeah, Harriet, by the way, I'm Brian Polstwaite. I'm a member of the commission and I'm also the director of our engineering division for the city. And my department executes the construction and reconstruction and rehabilitation of streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, et cetera, in the city. And this has been an area that my team and I have been really interested in trying to improve the way that we design our sidewalks and crosswalks to make it easier for blind people and people with vision impairments and vision disabilities to access them. And so Harriet was kind enough to describe in person and demonstrate how she's able to navigate the city. I would say, and we've discussed this internally a handful of times since December with the remainder of our team. So I'd say the main takeaways that we observed is the challenge, Harriet, that you had, and we're assuming is transferable to other people who are blind and visually disabled, is the length of the crosswalk magnifies the complexity of crossing. So one of the observations we had is that as the crosswalk was longer, the width between the distance between from curb to curb was greater, the greater likelihood that you either struggled to get to the other side within the crosswalk or thought you were at the other side of the crosswalk before you were. And that was just something that Becca and I noticed. And I don't think that was something that you were noticing for us. And so, but granted, we were only there for an afternoon with you, or even just a couple hours. So I think our data series is not very robust at the moment. To be honest, I didn't see any difficulties that you had with a raised crosswalk versus any other crosswalk. So I'm still struggling to understand the distinction that you're making there. But I'm still open to trying to understand that. The other piece that we saw was that skewed crosswalk or skewed wheelchair ramps do cause challenges for you orienting yourself perpendicular to the street or parallel to the parallel street, depending on which way you're crossing. And I think that was very apparent at the Buena Vista and Meacham intersection, as well as but not so much at the Buena Vista and Holland intersection, but I think it was still apparent. So I think there's and that's an area that I feel like we have some work that we could figure out ways to do, is create a better way to help people align themselves so that they know that they're facing directly across the street or directly in line with the crosswalk. I feel like there was a third one and I'm not remembering what it is right now.
That's fine, and
So I'll
thank
have
you.
to pass.
Well, thank you. Okay, well, I'll just want to set the scene for everybody now, and I appreciate your commentary. It's very helpful. What I explained to you, and I think it's Rebecca, and there were a few other people who came to observe, and Holly, of course, and Frank. that one of the critical navigational tools for a blind person is to have a tactile, directly perceivable edge, which ironically, when we didn't have curb cuts and we didn't have raised crosswalks, was the curb itself. And so I sort of demonstrated that instead of making a diagonal to the crosswalk from the front doors of the Davis Square T station, I walked straight to the curb and then turned right and approximated 20 or 30 feet as I paced. And then I could feel that there was a beginning of the wide crosswalk by the T. And the gradual slant down. And what I noticed as I started tapping and swinging my cane about shoulders width apart at an arc, there was a bumpy surface on my right, very convenient, and it led me nicely across the 30-foot intersection or whatever it is. Now, I had made a bland assumption because this was not rehearsed, that there would be another bricked or bumpy strip as I turned around, because I walked actually away from the intersection up towards the ice cream place for maybe 15, 20 feet, turn around, come back. I found the Ballard, which I thought, oh yeah, that's the right place. So then I stepped into the crosswalk and was arcing my cane to the right looking for this other bumpy surface, which I thought would be there. As it turns out, I was walking on the outer edge, which is painted in a bright way. And I actually even slanted myself so far that the first curb or first edge I felt was I had walked into the bicycle lane, which is really kind of a shame. So it's not just the length of the crosswalk, but it's also some kind of tactile direction, especially if it's a long one.
Mhm.
And also there's a lot of debate, and I've been talking with Michael Mewey, retired director of the Cambridge Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and we've been reading the U.S. Architectural Access Board ruling, which came out in August. And the grave difficulty we face is this, that it has been a standard, probably for 30 years or thereabouts, maybe a little less, that 24 inches of those little bumpy tactile warning panels is considered sufficient. And even since they were finally put in the Davis Square T station in the late 90s, because a blind woman fell in and eventually died from her electrocutions, we didn't have one there, even though it was a brand new station, relatively speaking. So I've always been very nervous on subway platforms that it's only 2 feet. But, you know, one doesn't raise a stink about it because one figures, oh God, it's already in stone, quite literally. And so the same issue here is that my cane, the way I walk, can absolutely miss a 2-foot strip. So, and I don't expect things that will change much, but these are just some of the issues that a blind person will face. And I have traveled in European cities. I have, which weren't perfect by any means. I have, traveled even in India to some degree independently, which is really crazy. But because we have ADA law, and the problem is it's kind of, as it says in the laws, the 24 inches is a minimum, but this would then require a city or municipality, whatever, to kind of break ground on something that is quite, is not done yet. And also one concern was brought up that apparently there were wheelchair users who said the bumpy surface what made it difficult or uncomfortable. And I just paralleled in my own mind well, there's uncomfort or discomfort, and there's lack of safety. So, it's kind of a really tough issue. And I'm just sharing all this with our whole committee and friends, just because this is what the experience has been. And what ends up happening, and that's my final point, is a blind person who's as independent as I am. I, by the way, travel in New York City as well, and the subway system there. The problem is we make up ways to get around, to work around the problems. And very often they're not legal, and we hope for the best. But the apex curbs, which you referred to tangentially, Brian, are just such a problem, because if you have tactile panels, sometimes they're spread out, of course, naturally at a 45-degree angle. But again, since it's only a very short strip of them, and they might be 10 feet apart or 5, 7 feet apart, I won't necessarily recognize it. Viola had that experience with me at Cross Street and Tough Street intersection. So yeah, I'm open for any questions or any additions, or I don't know, Pauline, if you have anything else you'd like to share about traveling, or if just anybody has any questions or comments. Thank you. This is Harriet. I'm not sure I said that.
My name
Pauline,
is Mauricio.
Holly, do you want to add? If not, I'm going to ask, we have other hands up.
Well, the only other thing I notice on that side of where the Somerville Theater is, when I've gone along that route, the way the sidewalk goes from brick to, what is it, cement or concrete, that can throw you too, because you think you're going the wrong way.
This is Holly. Can you explain what you mean by the wrong way? I can't visually.
Well, in other words, if you want to go to the theater, you go by the theater and you just want to walk straight down. I don't know what street that is offhand, but there's one crossing that you think is a crossing, but it's a driveway. And it has the same slope that the other one does.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm not making myself clear. I haven't done it in a while, but
No, this is
I mean,
Holly.
I
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
that has never made sense to me.
Well,
Where
Quick question for clarifying, Pauline, do you mean because we have had brick sidewalks, that could get confusing for you in a crosswalk?
yes,
I see.
yes,
I see.
because the crosswalk is also brick,
No,
and then it changed.
go ahead.
I don't really know how to describe this, and as I said, it's been a long time since I've done this, and the last time I did it was quite a while ago. I got confused and got completely misdirected. I ended up inside this little alleyway.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to take some questions. Mercy, you had your hand up first, and then Brian.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Mauricio Buembo. I'm one of the new commissioners yet to swear in. I'm from Somerville. I'm a wheelchair user. Particularly, I was not part of that maybe survey, much as it was very nice. But I think I'm going to make a general observation when it comes to the traffic lights. I don't know whether that's the right name, because I'm still grappling between British English and American English. I think I'm right. I mean the British, rather the traffic lights or the crossing points. The good thing with the crossing points, they have like a button which you press and then it talks and then it says, wait, wait. But I would suggest, if it can be in the future, time to come, that if I can press that button as a wheelchair user, because even that button has tactile. But I don't know how many of our people that are visually, people with I don't want to use the other word they use, but people with a visual challenge or people that are blind, most of us know that there is tactile on it. Okay, if they know what is the combination of a person that wants to cross the road and the drivers that are stopping, because you put the button, but there is no communication to the drivers. So it would be that if at all, if somebody pressed a button, then that button would be reflected on or maybe on the lights, that there are a couple of people with disabilities crossing, let's say wheelchair users and the rest. Because every time I've tried to cross the road, much as like I press the button, it serves little. And then even I have to race with the rest of the other people crossing the road. At times it's not enough time. Let's say if it's raining, you can't race at times past those counting times, 2, 3, 4, up to 24. So if at all, there could be an understanding or a communication between that button and the lights, because most of the drivers look at the lights. If it tells them to go, even if maybe you are still in the road, it depends on maybe another decision of the driver, either to stop, and at times if they stop, other people get past them. One time I was almost knocked down because of that. So in short, I want us to have a combination between the request of the button to be reflected on the lights, that maybe a person, maybe with a disability, that is not going to cross at the same speed as other people is crossing. I don't know whether I'm understood.
Yes, this is Harriet. I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, because it's one thing that is lacking. Because you press the button and say, stop, or maybe cross, and then otherwise that they speak. But there is no any indication on the lights or anything showing the drivers that there was a person who pressed, who requires a special request. So I think it needs to be reflected on the crossing points. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. This is Holly. Thank you, Rashid, for asking a question and putting out a topic on the table. Brian, I knew you had your hand raised. I want to make sure you get to add to the conversation, but it may also be what Rashid's asking about is probably in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so
If you don't
so
mind
this
talking
is-
about both, please.
yeah,
please.
so this is Brian. I initially raised to answer or to notify Pauline, but the rest of the team that we have by and large removed or replaced the majority of the brick sidewalks in Davis Square with concrete. There's some extra locations that we are completing this year. And there are some, especially in front of 2 development sites, that we are deferring to the developer to replace, because they should be doing that work within the next year or 2. And we've also removed all of the brick sidewalks and the crosswalks, with the exception of the large old slip lane in front of Mike's. So Pauline, if you have the ability to take a walk through Davis Square, I hope you'll find it a little more coherent and less disorienting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Murshid, I've never heard that request before. I'm hearing 2 things here. One is a way to extend the crosswalk, and another is a way extend the crosswalk time. And another is to somehow communicate to motorists that the crosswalk button was pushed. First time I've ever heard that request, so we'll have to look to see if there's any opportunity to do so. I know for the most part, we're limited to the tools that the equipment provides, because we don't make our own equipment. So I'll just have to see what abilities that we have there.
Yeah, I want to be a little bit more clear on that. What I'm saying, because maybe in fact, I said for future, I don't know how the future will be, but I think it's good to draw an analysis of maybe what is available. But I'm looking at a situation that you put so much energy into it, like I can press a button, because there are some buttons that show that I'm a person maybe with a disability or any other person. Maybe I press that button, and then at times it says wait, because I've severally pressed that button. I make it a point because I have a lot of interest in accessibility. I press that button. I would like this button to be like the button on the train, the orange lines, because they have a button on the new orange line cars. If I have a problem and it has like a disability kind of logo, when I press that button, the driver or the operator of the train can know that maybe I have issues. So for me, I'm looking at such a button that maybe in the light or somewhere it can indicate that it can indicate, much as there are so many people crossing, but this time around we have a wheelchair user, or maybe we have a visually impaired pedestrian that is part of the people crossing. So that person will know, okay, it will require maybe some more time, or it will require them to have like a little more cautiousness than they've been with other people. Every time I press that button as a person with maybe with a special need, so that maybe it reflects somewhere on the light, or it means adding an extra light for that or anything. That's what I envision.
Thank you, Rashid. That's helpful.
Okay, thank you all. This is Holly again. I'm gonna move on. Harriet, unless you have anything else you want to add.
No. not
Actually,
now.
would you mind introducing Laura?
Oh, sure, sure,
And then just briefly talk about that event.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Holly and I had the pleasure of getting to know Laura Beretsky, who's here with us tonight. She is an author, and she's just published a book called Seizing Control, and it's about it's a memoir, it's like a journal and memoir about her lifelong craziness around seizure conditions and work discrimination and really serious medical health decisions that she had to make in order to continue to have a life that would work. And it's an amazing little book. And in fact, we are so lucky she will be speaking, and we'll have a book discussion at the Central Library at 7 p.m. on February 12th.
West Branch.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Central? Yes,
You
West
did.
Branch. This is Harriet at the West Branch Library here near Davis Square. So just to give everybody plenty of time, and hopefully we won't have a snowstorm or anything like that. And I purchased a copy of Laura's book, but you, Laura, also provided me with a PDF copy that I could listen to on the computer, right?
It was said that worked well for you, but I could do either. I have both.
Yeah.
There's a Word doc that I sent you.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And it's a very intense and amazing story. And of course, all of us have stories around our disabilities and work and various other things. And so warmly invite everybody to come, bring any friends of yours if you like. And yeah, and I don't know if you want to say a word or two, Laura, feel free to.
Yeah, sure. So I'm envisioning that this event would include excerpt reading. I'm sorry, my voice is a little weird today. And then followed by a discussion. Holly and Harriet have kindly agreed to join me in a discussion about the Americans with Disabilities Act and employment protections that it offers, because that is one of the themes or through lines of my book. Was kind of detailing and outlining that challenge that I had when I had seizures in the workplace years back. And so I'm hoping this is 4 weeks out, so I'm hoping that we can get the word out through press releases and a flyer with maybe the commission's logo on it done, so that's, I'm just thinking the newspapers might pick it up more readily than if it's just me. This local author person doesn't have as much clout as the city commission. But there is a live registration link on the library's website already, which is fabulous. And I'm looking forward to it. I had a very different event at Central Library the other day that was reasonably well attended. Despite the change in date, because it was going to be Sunday, we had to move it to Saturday because of the snow. So I'm optimistic.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harriet, and thank you, Laura. Adrian, could you provide an update? I know there was some materials and things going back and forth with the communications department. Can you just remind us where information about that event can be found?
I just posted, the West Branch Library has already posted the registration link, so that is in the chat. Because I think registration is suggested, given the smaller space of the West Branch Library. With that said, Hawken is working on some things for social media for RSJ, probably later in the week, early next week. He wanted to get stuff out about the Celtics game first, since that's the 29th. And then this
Right.
a month away. So I will remind him tomorrow.
That'd be fabulous. I was actually able to get a newspaper article written about the event the other day in the Globe. And I have another event in between next week. It's Porter Square Books, a very different event with a medical angle, if anybody's interested, in conversation with the neurologist who wrote the foreword of my book. Point is, I got a little press coverage for that too. But this is such a different, this third event that we're doing is so different. I think it almost warrants yet another story potentially, but probably again, not from me, because I already worked Cambridge Day. Do you know what I'm saying? It should they're gonna be more likely, I bet, to write something that's pitched from your office than from me, is my thinking.
Can you also just, sorry, this is Holly again. Would you also just very briefly let the other members and residents understand how you asked, how the ways in which you'd like Harriet and I and others in the commission that evening to be a part of your event? I just want to make sure people know what you're planning and if there are other people who have interest.
Yeah, sure. This is Laura, and well, as I said, it would start maybe with an excerpt reading, and then a conversation about the ADA and the protections it offers. And Harriet and Holly, I'm hoping we'll find time to sit down toward the end of the month, leading up to the 6th or the 12th of February, to figure out what those questions might look like. I'll draft something once I get past next week and the event on the 18th. I can put my attention to this. And so it would be great to have people in the audience to help carry the conversation and share their own stories, because that would just make it that much more rich and interesting. If you care to join.
This is
Thank you very
Harriet.
much. Yes, Harriet?
I just wanted to add to that exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Everyone probably, or almost all of us, at some point or other, have had some issues with workplace, and each of us can tell a story or two, or any story. I have at least one or two good ones, but they can be very brief. But it's kind of giving the sense of where, though we have had the ADA for more than 30 years, the deeper education for all employers is still, we're still way behind. But it's a very interesting area. And again, just like the accessible walkways and so forth, when there is discrimination, we can go for laws, but we can also work through ingenuity. So we'll talk about that. It's one way to talk about the work issue. Thank you.
Hey, this is Holly. I'm gonna move us through the agenda. Each month I update everyone on how much funding we've received from the handicap parking violations. There's in case there are people who haven't heard of this before, at our meeting tonight, the city council accepted a specific piece of legislature that says that funds collected by the city for violations of handicap parking, where there'd be parking in a space if they don't have a permit for, that's handicapped accessible, or blocking a ramp that makes the ramp inaccessible, those fines go directly to our commission. They sit in a separate account, they earn interest, and then what we decide to do with those funds is at the direction of the commission. Each month, I don't think I've seen less than $3,000 or $4,000 being collected in a month, but typically there's about 6,000 or 9,000, and then there's always that one month that's kind of over $10,000. We've been doing this for, oh my gosh, has it been 2 years now? So it's a sizable amount of money, and we're all very thankful that we have this funds. And the goal of these funds is to people with is to help people with disabilities, and that is somewhat vague. It's the fact that it's vague is nice because it's flexible. Back to the beginning of my story, in December, we collected $8,900 in funds, in fines, excuse me. And that's without the interest amount. And I'm sure Adrian can give you the exact account number that I do not have in front of me, but we will get that to everyone. And what ties into those commission funds are events. Specifically, we did the Red Sox event. And that's where I had the pleasure of meeting you, Rashid, at the baseball game.
Yeah.
And what did you say to me? You were talking with my husband and I. He was explaining how the game works. It was a beautiful day. And what did you tell him was the other thing that you wanted to experience?
Asking me?
Yes, we had a conversation and we talked about many things, and we were sitting at the Red Sox game together, and you said to my husband and I that there was something that the next thing that you wanted to experience was what?
The Celtic game, the basketball stuff.
Yep.
I want to experience the Celtic game because I've always passed at North Station, and I look at people pass getting into the game, and then I only wanted to have that experience.
So that's where the Celtics game came from. That was your idea.
Wow, thank you.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
talking about that and sharing it with us. Again, what we do is for residents, about people who, I always like to say, live, work, and visit our community. And I think we all have our knowledge, or what our lives been, what we've experienced. I'm always very thankful when I can hear someone else's story or understand something in another perspective. So it was great to meet you then. And I just wanted you to know that that's where that event came from. And so we have funded that event. Adrian talked about there's a list of that there'll be a save the date or an ask for a ticket request. And do you have the piece of paper in front of me? We voted to spend $4,000 on that event, to include not only tickets, but if there were transportation costs or concession costs. The tickets were about $1,560. That bought us 26 seats. 20 seats are in, they're all in balcony section 310. For those of you who have can in your mind memorize the exact sections of the Boston Garden. I can see that, believe it or not. And the accessible seating is in row 2. There are 6 spots. I believe 2 of them can be used as not a guest, Adrian, not finding the word, a companion. Thank you. But we can bring 6 people who need who have mobility needs into those 6 seats. We also have, of those 20 seats, there's at least 1 aisle seat, and I for some reason can't find on the map if the end of our row is also an aisle seat, but we do have an aisle seat. So we've been trying to work on those other 2 items, which is about transportation and concessions. And originally I had thought we might need to vote for additional funding. But at this point, I do not think that we need to. And if something were to change, I would, of course, let you know. So we do have these 26 seats. And Adrian is going to be the point person for people who would like to attend. Again, it is for people who have disabilities. It is, it's this kind of gray area to me that, you know, we're here to, our funds are here to support people with disabilities. And we want to bring a group of people who have disabilities or are their lives are tied to disabilities. And then you have sort of the legal piece, but regardless, I think it's a great event. I think it's a great opportunity as a community to do another sporting event. When you see the links and the information, please feel free to share it with other residents. This isn't, it's an evening game, but we have had some at the Red Sox game. There were some a young man a few grade school age children also who were in attendance, who enjoyed the event. Adrian, you had a question.
Not so much a question, but the group does need to decide so Stephen can process if you want to put an amount of $40 or an amount of $50 on the concession gift cards to be used that evening for each person.
So we're stuck in a transportation bubble at the moment. And so that money
Sure.
sort of like, in my mind, sitting to the side, may or may not be used. But at the same time, the providing concessions and the way in which we should best be doing that has been a big conversation also. The goal is for our guests to have something to enjoy while they're sitting in a chair that's a $15 beer and a $9 pretzel. I think that can be an obstacle for all of us. And part of that is if we would like to allocate a certain amount of that money to allow people to have gift cards to go and get themselves something to eat that night. So I'm just going to open the floor up quickly if someone, if one of the members wants to raise their hand and just provide any comments on what their thoughts are. For now, just the voting members. If you feel that we should be giving these individual cards out to people. And then if you do, we can vote if we need to have more funding approved for that. Actually, I'm just gonna call on people if that's okay. Deborah?
I think that that it's a great idea to have the cards. I think that for people who find going to a Celtics game normally cost prohibitive, that it would be a boon.
Thank you for your feedback. Pauline?
I think for people who have trouble handling money, in specific situations where it might be a problem for them, those cards would be great.
Okay, Miss Harriet?
Yeah, I'm full on with the event. And also providing a card is lovely. It sort of presupposes, I think it would for me, that I have a companion, because I'm not going to any old concession stand. Somebody else got to go fetch it for me, unless they walk around the whole grandstand, I don't know. The other question that is such a pain is, I think we need to reach out and check in with our community somehow, a wider cross-disability community, about preparations for transportation. Because according to liability, apparently we can't hire a bus, or we haven't been able to in the previous event that we went to. And yet for each person or a pair of people to arrange their transportation, at least in my view, is really challenging. Not everybody has the ride, not everybody can use the T. So it's like, we got this wonderful event planned, and yet I personally haven't figured out what would be a way to ease the barrier of transportation, or at least to inform people if they want tickets. Do you have a companion? Do you have means to get there? Because we're not doing that, if I understand correctly. Is that right, Adrian?
Thanks, Harriet, through the chair. Happy to clarify there. Yes, unfortunately, the city is not in a position to use funds to provide a bus or any other transportation. There's many levels of legalities and liability that just can't be taken on. So I think your idea is great, Harriet. You have some time to utilize some community resources, and we can certainly, as folks RSVP with me, I can certainly do a check about where their comfort level is with various self-transportation options, and can certainly ask if they may need to buddy up with some folks, or figure that out. And I think logistically we can figure that out. So I hope that is helpful information. And I will begin to do that as folks reach out to reserve tickets. For those able to access the T, the Gilman station is right behind City Hall. And then if folks can meet at Assembly, that is 3 stops to North Station. Is that correct? I think that's correct. Murshid is my fellow Assembly resident, so I think I'm correct in the number of stops. So I will certainly ask that question, Harriet, and we can reach out to some resources. On the refreshment piece, the gift cards are the most efficient way, because we can, hand them out and let folks have choice, because we know many folks have different dietary needs or wants. And I think TD Garden probably has a wide variety of things, depending. With that said, one thing I do have to check is if it would be restricted in any way to types of beverages, meaning that folks would not be able to use the funds to purchase, as Holly said, a beer. That is something I do.
Oh, no. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not trying to ruin anybody's fun.
No.
I think there's I think it's a soda night or
No,
water.
no, I need to clarify, when I said that it's a $15 beer, isn't because I believe people
And that
shouldn't
is
can't
not
or
to,
wouldn't have a beer.
yeah,
It's just
that is not
atrocious.
to say if you want to use your own funds to do that, I think that's fine. You're an adult, but I don't
Yeah,
think.
I don't believe the card's a card. They can be used anywhere and they can be used for anything.
Right.
And they might even be able to use them for merchandise. If someone wanted a basketball or something.
The other thing, and this is getting very high school field trip, but I have to say it. If you do utilize the card options, Stephen and subsequent, I am unable to attend, but we will have to collect receipts. So if Holly, you take your card, this is what had been said, and I'm just
Oh, yeah, I
reading.
think we should figure out that process afterwards, if that's okay. I
Yeah,
definitely
that's
want to
totally
hear
fine.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and Brian, what is your feedback on the subject of cards for concessions for our guests?
This is Brian. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. If Ed says that it's a fine thing, if it's legally acceptable, I don't have any problems with it one way or the other.
Okay, so I'm gonna call a motion that we increase the funding from $4,000 to $4,500 for the event. That will add additional money towards refreshment cards.
I second the motion.
Holly, I have just a discussion point. You're saying
Absolutely.
adding $500. I believe we had. Yeah, so Adrian put some calculations in the chat. It looks like 40 cards for $40 for all attendees would be $1,000, $1,040.
Right.
So did you only want to increase the budget by 500?
My motion is to increase the overall budget from 4,000 to 4,500 because we haven't even spent $2,000 towards the tickets.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think we need to increase it by another $1,400.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we can increase it and not use it, but I don't think that's
Perfect. No, I'm good with that.
fiscally responsible. But I appreciate your question. So so that is the motion. I think I heard there was a second.
I seconded. All right.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Deborah, is that an aye?
yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so motion passes. We'll revise that budget. And then Adrian and I and Mr. Bean will huddle to figure out the best way to handle this process, and we'll circle back about transportation needs for our community. And I would only say for anyone who thinks they may need the ride to reserve now, only because just so everyone can make sure if they need access to the event by the ride, it's available to them. Yes, Miss Harriet.
Unfortunately, the ride is very limited, and so you can reserve it at most a week ahead of time. But I think it's a week, but it's not more than that for sure. So
Okay.
Just so people know.
And I appreciate very much, Adrian, your offer to when people reach out about tickets to bridge the conversation about transportation needs. And I think that's great that we're able to do that with you for our community. We definitely need some help there.
Really
another-
quickly, I'm sorry,
Sure.
Holly. Just so I'm clear to get the conversation going with Stephen, you all have increased the budget so there can be up to $50 on this card. Is that correct? Or is it 40?
So the budget for the event was increased, and then you and I can talk later or tomorrow about what the next steps are. So we can figure this all out quickly tomorrow.
Okay. So did you all not vote? I guess I'm confused because I need to start this process with Stephen tomorrow so you all can get these in time.
Okay, we can certainly talk in the morning. Commission funds. Oh, what time is it? 8 o'clock. Okay. So in the past, we have talked about different ways or things we'd like to use with our commission funds. We've also talked sometimes about ways in which we want to grow, influence, celebrate, educate people with disabilities. And, part of, the things that the Americans with Disabilities Act affords us is beyond just sidewalks and program access. It is, as we all know, much broader. It brings in things that are important, including education, employment, housing, the words like program access, things like public theater, sports, swimming at the Somerville pool, or going to a hotel room and having what you need in lodging. There's a lot of things that we can do within our built space, within our civic spaces. And also there's a lot of accessibility needs in communications, whether it be written, whether it be print or embossed, would be languages, or whether it be closed caption. There's lots of different areas and things in which we can, I don't like to go negative. I always like to talk about the opportunity, but I'm not finding the right words to say that we can not do better, but we can do better. That's the COVID. I can't find the right word for doing better, but celebrating, that'd be a better word. So I talked earlier that we were going to have an open discussion about what our role is, what we'd like to see our role is, and a little check mark next to events, and also subcommittees. And I know our members, as well as our potential soon to be hopefully new members, have discussed at least once that the majority of our work gets done through our subcommittees, and that the work in which we do as a commission is also and should also be decided by our members. And so we've had some standing subcommittees in the past, and the ability to really staff them and move things forward between each month relies on having these subcommittees. And so although we're not going to vote to build subcommittees, or we're not going to vote to talk about things we'd like to accomplish this year, or ideas of things that we can be doing this year, I would like us to have an open a dialogue about that. Harriet, did you raise your hand?
I did want to say something, but I just want to see if somebody else wants to speak first. There's one project that was proposed that I wanted to quickly review for our new people.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to finish my soliloquy here for one more second, and then I'm going to let Deborah comment next. So subcommittees. So in the past, we have had subcommittees around hiring, interviewing new commissioners. We've had a subcommittee for the Somerville High School Scholarship Foundation program that we run. And for those of you who have not heard this already, last year we funded $50,000 of our funds to the Somerville High School Scholarship Foundation. So we gave 10 individual students $5,000 each for their first year of college. And this year, last month, we voted, and the program this year is being funded with $55,000 in financing. So that will need a subcommittee to run that. So I'm I'm going to throw out just a few categories. Actually, I'm going to stop here. Deborah, you have a question or a comment? Sorry.
My comment is that we had talked about there being an education subcommittee, and I have not moved forward with anything with that because I was on my own, and my limitations with my chronic fatigue syndrome made me felt like I didn't want to take on something that I couldn't give my best to. But now that we have several members coming on who are also related to being parents of children with special needs, or having their background in the school system, I'm hoping that we can get a more robust subcommittee going. And I think the best way to start with that would be to have, once members are sworn in, and if they agree to be on the subcommittee, to have a meeting with CPAC and to really find out from them sort of what their needs are before we go down a path that maybe they've already covered.
Deborah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Thank you.
Excuse me, what's CPAC?
It's the Somerville Special Education Parents Advisory Council.
Okay, great, great. I just didn't know the acronym. Thank you.
So education is also, I have two lists here tonight, sorry. Education is at the top of one of my lists is one thing I don't think I've brought up before, is the idea of state and municipal policy work. I know some of us, or many of us, have been active in policy, whether it be at the municipal level or at the state level. Many of us have given testimony, or we've worked on certain bills to see if they can get passed. And so I thought that that might be something people thought had value, or they'd like to contribute to. Veterans is another area that I feel that we haven't been able to tackle, like education. It is very large and extremely important. Housing. Again, I'm going to throw at you like 50 things that are way too big that we could ever accomplish fully. And the goal is to sort of just chat about them and then figure out next month when we're able to vote on them, and hopefully have people who are like to be a part of them to make decisions that we can be successful at doing, so that we can actually get enough resources to them. And that doesn't mean that what we decide to do in the next month or two can't be added on as we have more bandwidth. I just don't want to set us up for failure, and I don't ever want anyone to feel that they had a subcommittee just for themselves, or had to pull all of that by themselves. That's not okay. So and other things we've talked about are special events and some different training, and certainly a lot about communications. So I'm gonna shift again, and I'm going to pull something up on my phone that I found today. Gonna see if it'll let me. No, go away. Let me post it.
Holly, are there any other hands up? I'm just wondering.
1 second. There's a celebrity in our midst. Someone had an article, something in WMBUR about the wheelchair bill for right to repair. Who had an article written about them recently? Mr. Rashid,
Sorry?
you had an article recently, and I think it was WBUR, maybe it was the Globe, about the wheelchair right to repair bill that was passed by the Senate.
Yeah, I was there.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So, okay, I know I'm going to keep saying it, but COVID is hitting me, my brain. But the wheelchair repair bill. It's something I testified on many times as well. And I was so pleased to see that. And when I opened it up, it had your picture there and it had your feedback about the importance of that. And so that ties back to my brain of state and municipal policy work.
Yeah.
And these are not, so thank you for that. And that was a great article.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw it out there. Is there someone who would like to talk, maybe that hasn't spoken yet, that'd like to raise their hand and just sort of give some, add some feedback or comments or thoughts about, areas that might be interesting for them to work on or that they'd like to see us work on?
This is Pauline.
Hi, Pauline.
I have a question about educating healthcare workers in hospitals and otherwise about, I don't know how to say this exactly the way I want to, but anyway, about treating your patients with disabilities with dignity, showing them the same respect you would someone who's not disabled.
Thank you for saying that. I know that you worked, that you participated in some of the training with the fire or the police about persons with disabilities. I know that Adrian does that on an annual basis, and that you participated in that. And thank you for that. And I will definitely write down healthcare education. Or educating healthcare workers about persons with disabilities.
I'm seeing it in graphic detail now. I mean, it's very interesting that a person who is blind and people walk in and out of the room and they don't speak. And it drives me nuts. It drives her nuts too. And my question is, what's wrong with people at least saying, hi, I'm here, just being friendly. When a person's in the hospital, he or she doesn't want to be isolated to such a point that nobody bothers with him or her.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
No, it's not. It's very frustrating, especially when, and the other thing is when the person needs help and nobody shows up. I understand that there are other patients on the floor, but at least try to make an effort to come and see what the problem is.
Yep. You're right.
You're right, Pauline. Michael, do you have your hand raised?
No, I'm actually fascinated, Pauline, by this is Michael. I'm absolutely fascinated by the idea that healthcare workers, who's by their very nature of their job to work with people who are in need, would not have that sensibility. So but I hear you in that. But when you were saying that, it did make me also think about the connection with the police and whether or not they have that sensibility, or at least being educated of working with people with disabilities. And you hear a lot about, people with mental health issues who are misunderstood by the police, or cognitive abilities who are misunderstood by the police and maybe, treated in a way that would have been done better if they had understood that they could be working with somebody who has, or dealing with somebody who has a disability. So I would throw that connection in as well.
And
You're right. It's
even if you're a visitor and you go into a room, you're visiting someone, and the healthcare worker who's in the room doing something in the room wants to grab you because they think you can't walk. I've had that happen too. You know, and I just wonder, why aren't these people better trained?
Very good question. Hidden disabilities, which includes mental health and other disabilities, are definitely something people don't understand. And I do think it has to do with proper education. And even recently, I was interacting with someone who has a hidden disability, and their actions, you wouldn't assume that how they interact with people that it was related to a disability, and that makes it even harder for that individual who can't express what's going on, and also for people who see behavior as it is and don't understand that there could be another cause. That's certainly not a simple thing. And then there's also, I know we have strengths in trauma, in the fields of trauma, and people being trauma informed and understanding that somewhat ties between what we're talking about. I don't know, Laurie, if you want to share anything about that. I don't want to force you in any way. I think your mic's on. Oh.
I agree with you, and thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, trauma, there's a whole set of protocols that people can learn for having trauma-informed workshops or classes or medical care and like that. And we've actually come a long way in the past 40 years.
Would you have interest in once everything is anointed and signed and the gavel hits the table, and maybe considering a committee that deals with trauma informed or healthcare education for people with disabilities, something. Okay.
I think that was a yes, excuse me, Harriet speaking. Did you say yes, Lori?
Yes, I said yes. Thank you.
Yes, Laurie said yes. This is Holly, sorry. Thank you, Laurie. Sheila, would you like to add any thoughts or comments about causes or areas that you think we could expand on?
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, and I expect, I'm not as familiar with what already exists with the commission and the subcommittees and interaction. I see Brian is here, and there's also a member of the engineering department for the city. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, so, but one of the things I've had interest in is that as we all know, this city has gone through a lot of development, a lot of roadway changes, a lot of things that for good and for bad have affected a lot of people in the city. And I think that if it doesn't exist, it would be helpful if this committee had some involvement as things are being developed, as opposed to finding out later that, you know, there's a problem with, you know, maybe the parking spaces, the HP spaces or bike lanes or whatever it is that sometimes I look at things that have happened in the city and it's very difficult to understand why maybe nobody thought about the fact that an HP space at Assembly Mall should be handicapped accessible to a wheelchair van, and it's not. So, but it seems like, I don't know if it exists, that there is a voice at that stage, the earliest stages when things happen, as opposed to waiting till afterwards and we can, you know, come back to the city and say, what were you thinking, or why did that happen that way? And then it's too late to change it. So is there a mechanism for that? Is it through maybe a subcommittee that would be created to work more closely with the departments in the city that are, driving the direction of changes. And
So
that,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, and just that there's an understanding from this disability community what their needs are when those changes happen.
Thank you for sharing that. This is Holly again. The part of the subcommittee is that whatever group becomes that committee would go off and investigate, bring information back, bring back suggestions, ideas, and then would report to the committee as a whole and talk about things that you found or next steps, how we need to, as a greater body, vote to look at certain things that may need to be done. And I too get upset when I see certain things that happen, that, like you mentioned, an accessible spot or a curb cut that may be at a different angle, like just some things that are much more glaringly concerning. But we as residents do have opportunities. I think Adrian even spoke about one early on, to give input on mobility and other task force and other projects and parks. And that when we as commissioners provide that feedback, I do feel that they feel it's from a source direct to the issue. But the having in I'm not sure what we would call it, but a roadway changes, civic municipal changes, whatever you'd like it to be, committee that looked at those things, I think would be a good idea. And we certainly have Brian on our committee, on our commission because of his role, but also as a commissioner, he has as in his role, he has great insight to be a member of the commission and also to route things properly. And I just want to make sure that everyone, especially Brian and Adrian, know that I don't mean to say anything disparaging that the city or mobility or your department or anyone isn't doing things that the way that they should. There are lots of great things that are happening, and we're not here to talk about things that maybe we don't like. I think we should be talking about things that are opportunities going forward. And Brian, our input towards things that are happening in the future. And Brian took a lot of time to come into Davis on, I think, what was the coldest day of the year. And Harriet was there. I actually brought my beach buggy because I couldn't find a wheelchair or a stroller. So I walked through Davis with a beat up old sand beach buggy, and we had some other residents that came over that had different mobility needs, and we had some ground rules. We made sure that Brian could see directly what was going on with Harriet, and it was as much educational for me and for some of the other residents who joined as what we thought we were going to contribute. So I think having a group that works on things that you're talking about, Sheila, would be a great idea. So we'll definitely add that.
And I think that's it at maybe at the early stages before it becomes an issue.
I can't speak for Brian, but maybe there's, if he's able to sort of help give some advice on how that would work best, or what he would recommend that we look at, or just some sort of advice, because like the topic of roadways and early involvement in planning, that's a big bite. So it's an important bite, but I think we definitely have Brian and others that are really good resources to help us.
Holly?
Yes, Harriet.
Well, I certainly would like to be on something like, I think I'd like to be on an accessibility committee, which is not only, well,
You are on an accessibility committee. It's called the Somerville Commission for Persons.
No, but I mean, as far as specifically, or shall we say, The physical access, and as we said, and also access to our website and all the other parts of access. And obviously, it'd be great to have 3 or 4 people on our newly configuring commission to join on that, because it is a very big job. I mean, not job, it's a very big area. And the thing is, the reason these things are not getting sorted out is we don't have people with disabilities helping bring the lens to different parts of the city to examine what's missing. Because none of us knows what's missing until it's missing. I may sound almost comical to say it that way, but that's how I understand it, you know?
Right.
And so,
Yeah, technology, communications are a big part of things that we need to help improve.
yeah, and I mean, I just one last thing about healthcare. The reason, I just have to say to you, Pauline, because I've been in the hospitals a lot, and I've also been in other places in hospitals. The sad part is, the lower the person is on the totem pole of healthcare, they think that they don't matter. Like the person who comes to empty your trash, or the person who comes to wipe down the floor, or even the person who delivers your food. You know, they are not given the invitation even to speak to a patient. So, you know, this is a huge area. I've even given what's called a grand rounds talk at Mount Auburn Hospital some years back to doctors and nurses and people. So, you know, it's where the light has not been cast onto it so that people become awake to it. So I'm on fire. I'd love it all. I'd love others to join.
This is Pauline. There is a book by a lady named Deborah Kendrick, and it's called All They Can See Is That You Can't. And the title. No, that's the title. And I haven't read it yet. I'm intending to get it and read it. And she explains some of the things that I talked about.
That's an interesting book. I'm gonna put that on my list of books for us. Give me 1 second, Helen. I know you want to speak, and I'm very happy that your hand is raised. Books have come up tonight as one of the things that we have discussed in the past. And we even, one of our meetings, we sort of threw forward several different children's books that we thought would be great to have in libraries or have accessible for children about people with disabilities. And so I'm gonna add that All They Can See That You Can't or Cannot.
All they is that you can't.
Say that one more time.
All they can see is that you can't.
So that is an important word. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Helen, hello. You know, give us some feedback, comments, thoughts. I don't think we can hear you.
I want to talk
Oh, there you go.
about what Sheila had to say.
Sure.
You can't hear me?
Yes.
Now I can. Thank you.
Well, let
Now
me
we
try
can.
again.
No.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to agree with what Sheila had to say. I think it would be great if we had a committee that was aware of what was going to happen and maybe have some input. There are disability issues around the city that have already happened and probably can't be changed, that I am very unhappy with. And I just would like the commission to have some input into what might be happening in the future.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or ideas? Anything?
I don't want to dominate, but if no one else speaks, I have one more thing about the bike paths.
Hold on a second, Ms. Harriet. Helen, just asking again if there was any other thoughts or ideas of other topics that you were interested in.
Okay. I would, if there were a subcommittee that talked about parking issues, I would like to be a part of that. I don't know if you've done that in the past or not.
I think that's a great suggestion. I will put it on my list.
There's another thought I would like to talk about.
Sure.
And I don't know if this ever has happened, but I grew up in Medford, and I remember there was a service where people with disabilities could get books from the library. They picked out the books. They called the library. It wasn't online then, and somebody would deliver them. Again, it's probably not an easy thing to have happen, but for people who can't get out of the house and whose only contact with the outside world is either television or books, I think it would be wonderful if we could do something for people like that.
That's a great idea. I haven't heard that before. You on a
That's all I
roll?
have to
You have a
say for
third
now.
one? Come on, Helen, you got me one more. I was hoping someone would have said recreation or art.
I think that's all for today.
Okay. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot. I appreciate your kindness. Mercedes, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, I would like to have like a subcommittee on information or media and information dissemination, because I'm not sure for how far has the commission been able to get full use of the media council. Is it called the media council? The media center, not the media council, the media center, the Somerville Media Center. I would like us to have like maybe if we can come up with some maybe programs that we can be able to use to get people to know how really it means. Like, for example, if you are complaining about maybe a given crossing point within Somerville, we can be reporting it. Maybe we're like taking some pictures of it. Maybe we can say like some areas of the week that needs to be done, and then we show them like on the TV, on the Somerville TV. We talk about them on the radio. We can bring various people with disabilities to talk about issues at hand. What are they experiencing in Somerville? And then maybe at the end of the day, if something is done, we appreciate. And then I also like to have like, still I think it will fall into under media. Like we have like maybe a symposium or anything like towards the end of maybe the year, whereby we can appreciate people that have been maybe doing like organizations or companies that have been maybe accessible, that have been doing disability compliance, like maybe activities, to appreciate them so that others can also emulate. So in short, I would like to have something more to do with upping our issues with the media, so that we reach out to more people, not only people with disabilities, but the entire Somerville community, so that they best understand what we stand for and what we can do, or how we can work together with them. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. I like that very much. I appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, we've talked about the words sort of communication or holding an event, but you really gave it some meat, explaining that it's focused on media and dissemination of information. I think that's something we haven't talked about before. And also symposiums. I love me a good event. I spent years making crazy events for health tech companies and products. And there's actually a symposium, it's called Symposium. I'm holding up a piece of paper from the Mass Office on Disabilities, and it is their annual Disability Connection event. And the Massachusetts Office on Disability has this event each year. It's in April 10th this year. It's a free event. They do ask that you register so they know how many people physically be there. It's at Assembly at the Mass General Brigham office, which is easy parking, easy to walk to get to. And it's from 10 to 1. And I was actually going to reach out and see if there was a part that we could play as a commission, Rashid. So I might, I will get this sent out so people can get some more information about it. But I went last year. It was really great.
This time round is gonna be, I think, organized at Assembly Row. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you
Just
been
my
to?
neighbor. Yeah.
Have you been to MOD's events before?
No, but because I work with Boston Center for Independent Living, and that's how I managed to capture the information. And I was still wondering how best we can be into it, because we are the host as far as disability issue.
Yeah.
And then we need to have our visibility as the host. Maybe if at all there is something we can do.
Definitely. I like also that you said end of year, because I think it will take a lot of planning.
Yeah.
And nothing like starting now for something like that. I see Deborah and I see Brian with your hands raised. I just remembered I need to talk about one more thing on our agenda. So just bear with me for a few minutes. Under new business is the AAB variance for 20 Stephenson Amon Street. And that was a request regarding the depths of sinks. So kitchen sinks, for them to be accessible, can't be 7 feet deep. They need to be a foot deep, let's just say. Clearly an exaggeration, but it is specifically if it's too deep, it's not easy for a person with in a wheelchair to have access to that. And the materials, the applications, the letters were all sent to everyone. They're all in the meeting material links that were posted. However, I found out today that the hearing, it came before the Massachusetts board yesterday, and they granted them, they approved them being able to use a deeper sink in these units with understanding that if someone were to request one that is not as deep for accessibility needs, that they would be able to handle that. And it's taken me about 3 years to even understand what I'm just explaining as far as sink depths and AAB and variance in group 1 and 2. One of the things that's on my to-do list for 2024 is to get us more training on things, specifically variances. But in summary, they asked if they could use sinks that were not as deep, so that sinks that were deeper. And the state said, yes, that would be fine. If we feel very strongly that we do not want there to be sinks that are deeper than someone may need in the future, we can discuss that. We can write a letter. We also, I think we have at least 30 days from when it's heard to send another letter. I personally don't think that we need to have a long discussion because it's already been granted. Brian, I don't know if you have any feedback on that. I didn't even know that a hearing could be like an application could be submitted, and before there was even a hearing, it could be approved. But it looks like it was.
Yeah, this is Brian. I really don't have any insight on this.
Okay, thank you.
Holly, I'd just
Um,
like to clarify one point, if I might.
Sure.
Okay. From discussing it with Michael Mewey, his explanation was 5% of the new apartments will all have the shallow depth sinks. And there will be a written policy that if anyone wants to change out a sink, it will be to no cost to the tenant. Though that's not the best thing in the world, it encouraged me a bit. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. I think the what I'm trying to express is that it was on our agenda to review the variance application, but it was already decided yesterday and it was approved. Adrian, do you have some
I do. So this was originally sent by, I think, the architect to various parties on December 6th. And each party has up to 14 days to respond because that is the threshold in which the MAAB can put it on their agenda, which is not a lot of time. So I'm not in support of that, but it's a very quick turnaround. So if he sent it to or submitted it on December 6th, the MAB at any point 14 days after that could put it on an agenda to decide. It's not a very you've all discussed this before because variance requests can come in at any time and they often don't line up with meetings. But I think there was some previous discussion, if I remember, and I don't know if this feedback could go to the MAB, whether that's through the MOD from a collective response from municipal commissions, but given schedules, 14 days just doesn't seem to be a lot of time because it's not 14 business days, it's 14 calendar days.
true?
If something is approved by the whatever board it is, can that be rescinded with enough pushback?
Well, I'm gonna have to answer that one. Any variance requests like this to say the sinks are supposed to be X size, and for whatever reason they're asking that several of these sinks are not that size, but they will provide accessible options if they need to be. All of the paperwork, all of the requests, all the hearing, everything is public, and the public is always invited to follow along to these requests and to attend the meetings and to write letters and provide feedback. So it is absolutely public. And part of that, I think, which Adrian talked about is even though they have ruled in favor of that, I believe there's 30 days in which anyone, including our commission, can send a letter to the Architectural Access Board, who looks at these requests and say, we strongly feel differently. We strongly feel you should have approved it. We strongly feel you should not have approved it. So it is absolutely a public opportunity. If you have the time and you'd like the information on all of these meetings, they are every 2 weeks they meet, and it's a very long list of cases that come in. And one thing that we did talk prior was having a subcommittee that would review variances when they came in, because having 14 days not business days, response, it makes it very difficult to talk about something when we only have, 30-day cycles or once a month meetings. We are at 8:56 people. And one last thing about variances. On February 26th is a hearing for the 33 Bow Street variance. Last month, we did have the members of Bow Street and February 26th, 2 o'clock. They presented at our meeting in December. And the letter was drafted and sent to them, and the actual hearing is February 26th, if anyone wants to attend that. Deborah, thank you for being patient.
No problem. I will just say regarding the variance, I am disappointed because I felt that their variance request translated in fact to, we think this law is impractical because we don't like this law. And that I am a little loath to let it go without comment, that the board sets that as a precedent, that, when we have so rarely, brand new buildings being built, which have the opportunity to be fully in compliance from the beginning. It would, and being in compliance is in fact our full goal. I'm sad to see that this is not what they were doing, although I understand the ability to do the switch out, but I think that letting it go without comment is a missed opportunity.
Would you like to send that comment in, or would you like the what would you like, how would you like that comments to be sent in? To be
I could write something and send it to you. I'm not familiar with sending things to them.
If we were to send I'm literally talking out loud trying to understand this. If the commission were to send a letter as the commission, any response to that variance, we would have to have discussed it and then voted on what that response would be for it to actually come to me from me as the chair.
Got it.
However,
then I would be happy to send it in on myself if you
no,
want.
but however, I feel similarly that I was not pleased with the decision. And two residents certainly can chat about it, and I can give you the information, and we can see if you'd like to send something in. I might send something in on my own also.
Okay.
I want to make sure that you know what you're able to do as a resident in the city that has this variance. I was concerned that it wouldn't be clear to people that there was an option for a different sink size. And it may not be clear to people later on of that is something that was agreed to. More of a communication concern and executing on that. Brian, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just as a point of order and opportunity, if you know what are the key bullet points for the letter would be, we could approve it tonight for Deborah and you to author the letter and submit it, so long as it follows those bullet points, if you want to. But that is the way that we can relatively, that's really the normal way that we write letters.
Cool. I appreciate that. What do you think, Deborah?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds great to me. I appreciate that, Brian.
But you have to, but Holly, you have to have, like right now, to determine what those bullet points are before we close the meeting.
Oh, no. Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
100%. Yes. I need to go back to my little piece of paper. So basically they felt that the size of the sinks did not need to be ADA compliant, that they could be swapped out later on if someone were to request that.
I feel I must interject, okay?
Sure.
Is compliant for 5% of the apartments. So the question is, are we talking about Somerville regulations, which would say it should be 10 or 12%, which I don't know if it's even upheld at all by our municipal government now? I mean, so the point is, it is compliant for 5%. So I mean, there must have been a request for more than that, and I approve, I support it. One other thing is, my understanding is we have 30 days to submit an appeal and say, we don't agree with this. This is my understanding. So I'm just putting those pieces of information in for whatever it's worth. Thanks.
Brian, can you translate? Are you looking at you have that? I'm looking at the application and
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with Harriet on this. And I don't know what Michael Mewey explained to you. But my interpretation of this is that they're seeking an exception to all group 1 dwelling units. I don't know if there are other group dwelling units. I don't understand dwelling unit requirements, but they're looking to have the deeper sinks in all group 1 dwelling units, which is an MAB requirement. So they are seeking a variance. So I don't know if they're installing any 6.5-inch deep sinks anywhere in the building, unless somebody asks for it.
I think yes.
Michael said that they were agreed to 5%. Now I'll have to call him up tomorrow and ask him again, because
it doesn't say it anywhere in here, but I know that there's a distinction between group 1 and group 2. I don't know what the difference is.
Oh, I do know the difference. This is
Okay.
Harriet. Group 2 is fully accessible. Everything about the apartment is fully accessible, including the sinks. The number ones are supposed to be outfitted to a degree for partial accessibility upon need and request. Now, that's very slippery slope, but I'm just saying, as I understand it from speaking with Michael today.
Okay. Harriet, this is Brian, that makes a ton of sense. If group 1 is intended to be, shall we use the word convertible?
Yes.
It is partially accessible and it's convertible to full accessible or more accessible. Then I think you could argue that this variance is in line with that logic, even if it doesn't meet MAB.
It's a mess, is what it is.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're saying that group 2, which is 5% of the dwelling units, is fully accessible with the 10-inch sinks.
Whatever the shallower depth is.
With this,
I'm sorry, the 6.5-inch sinks. My bad.
But then why are they seeking a variance? See, that's what I don't get.
Because it sounds like group 2 by MAEB requirements requires the 6.5-inch deep sink.
Can I interject for 1 second?
Please.
I could be completely wrong, but I think what they're saying is group 1, that the maximum depth of a sink is not to be more, the sinks are not to be more than 6.5 inches in depth. And that's required for group 1 units.
Yeah.
And it's, the difference is demolish or update, in the sense that group 1 are built in a way that they can become accessible units if they needed to, in the sense that grab bars, additional accessible features. However, the doorways are the right widths. The doors open correctly, things that don't require complete demolition. And type 2 units have to be completely accessible with additional features that make them accessible. But they're asking that their group 1 units can have a sink that is deeper than 6.5 inches.
Yes.
So they want really deep sinks in their group 1 units.
Yes.
So I'm guessing the general building code is that sinks are not supposed to be 7 inches deep.
Well, they're not required to be. It's not that they're not supposed to be. There's just not required. There's flexibility in the building code.
Then why would the group 1s need relief?
So my understanding, based on what Harriet has said and what this has said, is that MAAB requires both group 1 and group 2 to have the shallower sinks. Group 2, they're not seeking any variance request on that. That's fully accessible as required. Group 1, and I'm extrapolating here a little bit, but group 1 already has provisions in that group to change the unit to make it more accessible if the tenants request it. And so they're essentially asking for the depth of the sink to be a part of that request to change if the tenants request it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Deborah?
Also going back to what you were saying, Holly, is I don't know how tenants know that they can and, will be able to request that in the future. I mean, it's one of the reasons we have code when a building goes up is so that tenants are protected. And I don't see this as a more practical solution for accessible needs than building to code.
I'm nodding my head and writing those things down. I would also add I think you might have already said it, the piece about the process, and that people would clearly understand the process in which they could ask for a different size sink. I think those seem to be the 3 talking points, unless you have any others that we would put in the letter.
No, I
Holly,
think
would you?
that's-
Yeah, Holly, would you repeat those 3 talking points so I can get it recorded?
Sure. And correct me if I misspeak. That is not more practical. That is not more practical to put in deeper sinks, and the concerns of the process in which people will be notified that they can request a different sink size. And Deborah, you said the code protections.
I've said that it protects the tenants to build to code rather than to have to vary it later.
Okay. Any other talking points? Deborah,
That
or any-
that our goal is to get to 100% accessibility, and that the only way we're going to do that is if we build to accessibility when we have new building.
Okay, I got that one too. Anyone else have anything that they want to add to this list so that we can vote and a letter be drafted?
Just read the points over again, please. This is Harriet.
Brian?
Yeah, I'll read the points as best as I can.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna add that, and I'm gonna add two prelude points that I think you'll need to say anyway. So the motion essentially is going to be to write a letter to the MAB summarizing the variance request, noting that the MAB granted the approval prior to the local commission's meeting. 3, noting our disagreement. Disagreement's not the right term.
Not in agreement.
No, there's another term where we don't support. This commission does not support the variance approval or the variance requests. And then the 4 reasons why: it is a belief that it is not more practical to install deeper sinks, that it is unclear how tenants will be notified that they can request the change. And I would also add, how would that ever be enforceable? Nobody's watching them. 3rd is that new buildings should follow the building code. That's why it's there. This is not an unusual circumstance. This is a normal circumstance, and buildings should follow the code. And 4 is our goal as a community is to have fully accessible buildings, and providing variances against what accessible code that we do have does not support a fully accessible community. Deborah and Holly, is that a reasonable characterization of your points? Okay.
I think that's perfect.
Thank you.
So based on those bullet points, I will make the motion that the commission write the letter to the MAB not supporting this variance request.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
All those not in favor? All those abstaining?
I'm going to abstain from this one. I don't know.
I know, you
subject
have to.
well enough.
I
And I
need,
want to say one last thing that I should have spoken of before. Are we certain that no hearing was held and we just didn't know about it? If we can say there seems to have been no hearing, that would be handy too.
well, it was brought up at their meeting and the minutes aren't posted yet.
Okay, okay.
So all approved, 1 abstention. We're good.
And we're only 15 minutes over time. Oh, actually, no, we're only 14 minutes over time.
Okay. I
My-
move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
Seconded. Thank you very much, Holly.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Gonna tap the gavel. But thank you all for being here tonight. And I really appreciate everyone's participation and voices. You have a safe month. See you in February.
Have a good evening.
Hi, everybody.